Welcome back to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. He's back again, and he's wearing one of the shirts that are on our shirt. Look at that. It's a beautiful, and dude, that has to feel good when a friend or someone sends a picture wearing your shirt. That has to feel good.
That is awesome. It's great. I mean, I love all the different shirts you've created too. I'm like, oh, I want that one. Oh, I want that one. Oh, I want that one.
I mean, that's probably like the goal, in my opinion, is like if you're an artist, I think Teespring's probably the best place to get your designs out there. Especially I tell you all the time too, much like I tell my buddy Adam, put your signature on it huge because so people know who made it. Because people like they see the design, they go, "That's a cool design. Let me see who made it." And the next you know, it's your signature at the bottom. They look it up, and bam, now you got more traction where people could see your awesome work.
Yeah, should have done like a little like website link in the corner kind of thing. Like, hey, go here if you want to get that.
Don't
But
be
also,
like those people that put the decals.
this is what you really want, though.
Oh
right
yeah,
there.
yeah. But you don't want the decals like how people put on their cars where it has their Instagram or Facebook, and they're like, "Here's my Instagram profile on Facebook," and they put it on their car and they drive around town. Dude, that just looks like, what are you doing with your life?
Well, maybe if you're filming from your car. I don't know.
Because we have a special event that happens. I think we talked about before is like this H2OI event where all these like really like these Hondas, Toyotas, everyone soups them out with like giant spoilers and gets them really low to the ground and make some cambered wheels where the wheels look like you're bow-legged.
Yep.
And they drive around with Instagram stickers on their car so people follow them. Like, how much attraction do you actually get? Or you just get some person that messages that profile and calls you a piece of trash?
Probably about 50-50. You probably pick up a follower and get a hater at the same time, kind of thing.
So it's a swing or a miss.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. My car, if I tried to do that with the tires, it would probably just like roll over and die. So
I thought the point of a car was to get you. I get it because like I just saw Fast 9 the other day. So I was like, bro, let me tell you something. That's too many movies for one franchise. At this point, I'm like, all I could stare at was like, it looked like Vin Diesel just did arms the whole entire like shoot to get ready for the film. They're like, we need you to start working out again. He's like, all right, got this movie coming up. I'm gonna work out. He just did arms because his arms were jacked.
well, he needs to be able to grab a helicopter and pull it to him, isn't he? Isn't that what he does in those things?
They went to space in this one, so it was
okay.
Like, I was like, hang on a second. Like, everyone was cracking jokes about them going to space.
They went to space?
Yes.
Oh, so they're like 2 episodes behind Sharknado then.
Dude, it's going to end up being like Sharknado. Like I just picture like, well, the thing is like they brought in this thing of like how much, I don't want to spoil it, but like how much is like luck and how much is like something else going on, like how they've survived all these amazing things. You really look through the history of it. They've stopped trains. Everything kind of seems like, okay, that's very, very lucky. But then all the stuff they're doing in 9, I was like, there's no way that Vin Diesel at like 40 something is doing all that without getting like a back spasm. I throw my knee out when I get out of bed.
He has his Wheaties in the morning and it really, really does it,
His arm, like I was like, they're just giving him tight shirts to wear to constrict like his muscles to make him look jacked. Like, when you see on Amazon, they have like the 6-pack shirt you can wear. That's what it felt like with Vin Diesel, because I was like, he has a dad bod. Like the rest of his body's out of shape, but his arms are just jacked.
Like I said, he's got to be able to pull helicopters. So, I can see him in the gym right now, a helicopter in each hand.
How much weight is that? It depends on the helicopter. If you got like a certain type on this side and then a certain type on this side, you're gonna have like atrophy in your arms. I do have to ask though, because like we talked about off air, you had an event that you went to, and I feel like a parent that has just literally given like a person, a random stranger, a ticket into a part of me, which is just sending you off to this amazing, you called it the Steampunk Ball. That's your words. I have no idea what that means. I'm guessing it's a convention.
It was a steampunk ball. It's kind of convention-esque, but there were a whole bunch of bands. It was all live music. Everybody was dressed up.
Did you like, what did you dress up as?
I'm trying to think if I have any photos floating around. I can show you off my phone right here. High technology.
That's why we have it, right? I mean,
right.
Besides tweeting at other people and telling them that they're they're horrible
or following their cars with the bow-legged wheels.
Dude, you don't know how bad that is around here. Like, it's just, you see that, I'm just like, oh my goodness. Like, some dude yelled at me because I'm in my 20s, so I'm like the perfect type of people that are driving these cars, as all kids in their 20s. And some old guy was like, you're ruining our town. I'm like, I'm from here, bro. Like, I'm driving I'm driving a Kia.
You're
Like
like, I am your town.
I am your town. I made this place. So you got the greens. Oh my goodness, who is that?
Ooh, that's me.
What character is that though?
I just put together a bunch of random stuff I've collected over time and made my own steampunk of it.
So what's the point of the steampunk ball? Was it just like, is it like a convention a little bit in a way, or
Yes.
is
Yeah. I
okay.
was a vendor at the steampunk ball. I was invited because I had worked on some blueprints for a time machine. They're building some props to do a steampunk time machine movie.
Okay. I thought we were
And
talking about a real time machine. I was like, hang on a second. What do you mean the blueprints?
oh
How did you
yeah,
design it?
well, they designed the time machine and they sent me photos of the time machine, and then I designed blueprints to that machine. I created the science and the jargon, like made it all absolutely ridiculous, but it's all there in the blueprints now. They loved that, and now they want to get me involved in the movie. So
Um, so I have a question about,
yes.
have you ever seen the show Enchantment with like it's kind of like I guess a Futurama version of like Knights at the Round Table type deal. It's on Netflix.
I have not seen it, but it sounds like something I should be watching.
It's an adult cartoon. Like I wouldn't watch it
Oh,
with like,
Disenchantment.
is that what it's
That's the
called?
one.
Disenchantment?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. With the little demon guy and the
Yeah. So
yeah, yeah.
would you prefer to live in that like technology age, or would you prefer to live in like for instance, like the steampunk part in one of the seasons, there's this whole town that only believes in working with like steam, electronics, and technology, while or would you want to live in the fantasy mystical magic era where you're still going around with swords and all this and not having bicycles that could we don't even have that. Like
Flying bicycles.
yeah, with like a helicopter attached. I mean, I get it's unsafe, but like there's a part probably with the Wright brothers where we're like, we could have went this way with it. And instead we're like, no, we're just gonna keep making more planes. We're not going to go anywhere out.
We're gonna try to keep people alive when they fly instead. Okay. Yeah.
You're telling me that I can't ride a 10 speed and then cycle as fast as I possibly can and then just get it to fly up in the air like a propeller?
Oh, you can, but it always helps if you have a giant steam engine on the back of it, pumping hot steam between pipes around your legs and over your shoulders in order to create a jet sort of a system.
I get burned
Much
when I
safer.
use the oven. I'm not doing that.
There's a guy at the steampunk ball who had a backpack that would make tea. He had a tea kettle. He had a tea
What?
kettle on the top of it, and he'd walk around, and eventually it would. Oh! You reach back, pull the tea kettle off. He had his little like pack on the side. Take out a teacup. Anyone like a cup of tea?
So you're telling me that the guy spent all this time making this amazing suit and then it's going to take him 40 minutes if he wants to sit down and take a break. Yeah.
Yes, but at the steampunk is not about practicality.
See, okay. I mean, isn't that kind of the point of technology? Is supposed to make our lives easier. You're telling me it's not about practicality. It's
Well,
like,
steampunk is about the concept of what if electricity wasn't what we did. Like if you go back to the Victorian times when Thomas Edison, Tesla, electricity became the thing we used for the power stuff. What if instead during that time steam became the thing? Suddenly you're doing like steam engines and piping and that kind of thing instead.
would we be better than we are now? Do you think if we would have
I
went off
think
of
would
steam?
be kind of charred to crisp, but if you like being charred to a crisp, yeah, maybe.
Well, I mean, I think eventually they probably perfected. It's kind of like when they made
Yeah,
cars in
yeah.
the beginning. The cars, they only made a seatbelt for the driver. So if you got into an accident, your whole family was dead. Like it was
Yeah, you have a car. What do you need a family for?
at that point, they're like, hang on a second, we got to add seatbelts. So I'm wondering, I never knew that about the whole Steam thing. I thought eventually it just faded out because the fact we kind of went in a different direction, but I didn't know I didn't know that
The
was around the
steampunk
beginning.
idea is that that's what continued. So then a lot of people at steampunk balls are creating their own, whether they work or they don't work, inventions based on continuing the steam idea as opposed to the electricity idea.
I think that would probably increase our air pollution, wouldn't it?
Well, steam is just heated water, so
Might dissipate some particles. Never mind. It
Yeah,
actually
I
might
mean, maybe
benefit.
maybe it'll be kind of like Seattle everywhere all the time. Like you get 5 days a year where you actually get some sunshine.
Can't see 5 feet in front of your face. See, when I think of steam, I think of old Mickey Mouse cartoon where he's driving the steamboat and he's
Yep,
whistling. That's
yep,
that's why I look at that. I'm like, we still have ferries, like ones that go on like the marsh and they sail
yep.
around.
And in the steam engines and all that kind of stuff. That's all. Like if that became the norm for our equipment, like suppose you had a phone that actually had like a little, like you had to pour water into it and had like little fire going on in there, and you're like, oh, power up my phone,
We're already in
little
like
stack on it. Go, woo, okay, here we go.
well, most places are droughts. So like how would you need to make like figure out first that's the first thing is you need to desalt the water because somehow we're like people are dying of thirst and we still have all this ocean beside us, but we're like we can't get the salt out. I'm like, but we can get to Mars and you're telling me we can't get the salt out of the water. It kind of I'm looking at it like yeah, one guy just spends like 5 minutes into the steam or whatever you have to do to desalinate, but there's no one interested in that. That's like with the steam thing. There probably at the time wasn't a lot of people that were like doing the whole steam thing. They wanted to find a new trend. I mean, back then it was all about getting your name in a book, much like it
Right,
is today. Most
it
people just
still
want their
is.
name on an Instagram page or something. But
Right,
like,
for their lowrider.
what about if Tesla was the guy? Imagine if Tesla, we took all of his stuff, and the
It
next
would
thing
have
you know,
been completely
we
different system.
would it be
Yeah.
better though?
And that's the whole steampunk idea. Like, what would the world be like if this became the thing?
But that's
You
see,
know?
that's the thing I'm trying to think of here is that I don't know how far it would go with Steam because we only know with what how far we've gotten with it. There's never been
Right,
all
right.
these things that have expanded past that. Like would Steam get to a better place? Because the way you say it is like a little device that steams up water out of your phone, by you got to put water in it. I look at that looks tasking. I don't even like sticking my phone up to my head sometimes. It starts clicking. I start thinking I got a brain tumor or something. Like,
Yep.
would it evolve past that to where it
Oh,
would just
if it became the thing, it would. I mean, same thing with electricity. Like, heck, your phone, used to be this big box on the wall, and careful about the voltage.
you still walk around the corner with this landline and you got to hope that someone's not on the other side, like around the
Right,
cord or
right,
something.
right.
Cause then you choke them out when you walk around the corner with it. Like, hey, yeah, I'll be over around like 5 p.m. There's a dude getting choked by the cord on the corner in the kitchen.
Oh, yeah, that's called the party line.
The party line. Because would you wanna like what would your idea, I guess, would be? Because if you're creating a blueprint exactly for like a steampunk time machine, you probably did you do any research for that or did you just base one off a concept in your head?
All right. So how the way this one in particular worked is they built the prop for the movie of the time machine, and they sent me photos of it from all different angles, and then I just sat down, I drew the time machine at different angles. I came up with names for the different parts, and I came up with absolute malarkey reasons for different things on it. Like I was like, oh, those are the time stabilizers. Like it had smoke that comes out of like these turrets on the sides of it when it's running, and I said that's to help desensitize the time traveler so they don't run into shock when they change from one time to another. It's kind of like like an adjustment phase. I created all this kind of like, I just made up all kinds of,
But
and I made
it's
up big words that based on real words, put in there, and little arrows, and like dissecting different parts and saying, and this has this inside it. This is run by a hamster and a wheel over here.
But it sounds like something a scientist, like if a doctor came up to me and said, you have this, you need to take this and this. How many times did we listen to that? That sounded like something that would be oh, I didn't even think of that. Like that sounds
That's
exact. So,
that's
okay.
why the director liked what I did with it, and that's why he wants me in on the project, because I'm taking the ridiculous things and making ridiculous sense with them. Like, oh, that's obviously there because you never know what the terrain's going to be like, so you should need to have skis on the bottom of it in case the tectonic plates have shifted and you're not going to land level. You need to be able to travel without crashing. You don't want to damage your time machine, so you take it back. Things like that.
The main question is if we did go with steam, would we actually have time travel or is electricity a better what in your thoughts then? Do you think electricity is better or do you think steam would be better?
Well, I think you can actually, I think you could take steam and create electricity with it. You generate power by heating water, and then you just convert it. I think electricity, kind of like you can tie it to solar panel power now. You can tie it to nuclear. You can tie it to all these different things. I think electricity is kind of like the product you get from all these other different kinds of systems. You know what I mean?
I just feel like the board meeting went like everybody's pitching their own thing. Like there's the coal guy, there's the whatever nuclear thermal, whatever you want to call it,
So we
energy
had like
guy.
the, yeah, you're picturing like the power summit, like the
Yeah.
ultimate get together. You had the guy who had his little like gyro thing. You had the guy with pinwheels that was ready for wind. You had the guy with sunglasses and SPF 50 ready for solar. Uh,
More like, you know how when people see a dog that looks like their owner, that's kind of how I'd picture him. Like the guy who's doing nuclear energy has like a third eye, like on
mhm,
his chin or something like
yep,
that. So
and
like
he's wearing like a lab coat that glows green when the lights go out. You know.
like every time he goes to the bathroom, the water just looks, or his pee looks green when he leaves. It's
Yep,
like, okay,
yep.
that's the nuclear guy. Definitely
That's the
no
nuclear guy.
side effects there. But I
No,
feel
no
like
problem.
it was like a money thing. Like everyone's like, okay, what
Yes.
would our best to
What's
be?
the cheapest, and who in Thomas Edison? People have kind of demonized him lately, but he was in a business world with a product that, you know, he was a business guy. I mean, he
Yeah.
knew how to take this thing and market it and make a ton of money with it and he basically created the industry that makes all the money these days, you know, like everything's done with electricity, you know.
Well, for instance, Jordan Belfort, why after everything he caused people to like basically kill themselves when they lost all their money, all their finances, all their mortgages by investing in penny stocks. He got rich, he did a scheme, but people celebrated because the movie was so fucking good. Like Thomas Edison, he was a competitive person. That's what happens when you get into business. You're trying to crush the competition, make sure that you're the only one there because you're only worried about your success.
Yep. Yep.
People stand to Tesla's defense. I was like, yes, Tesla was an amazing scientist, but he's also
Not a
batshit.
businessman.
He was a batshit crazy person too. He
Yep.
was married to a pigeon. Like
Yep.
people look at this thing and they go, well, that's the thing they use against him too. Like people say, well, why didn't we go with him? Well, at the same time, he was kind of nuts. Thomas Edison, I think people look at it more in the ethics of morals. He burned an elephant alive in front of a whole audience of people to
To
show
show
that
the power.
electricity was more effective. And I think, hey, I mean, that's kind of the whole thing back then. Nobody knew. They just wanted to see what was going to progress them into the future because we had
Right.
this
Right.
ideal utopia of flying cars and helicopter bicycles.
We still do. We still do. I mean,
It's not getting there though. We're worried about going to another planet.
well, we're almost at cars driving themselves now.
Well, do you think if we perfected so much technology here that we could, when we go to another planet and we try and colonize on there, could we invest a different type of technology instead of using electricity? We could use like thermal power or something like that that would
Whatever's more, you know,
viable to the area.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Like if you
There's
had a whole
no
planet of
wind in
steam,
space.
the wind in
You
space.
just get sucked out of a but because I look at that, I'm like, for instance, for you, if you're creating this part and you're getting into this thing, have you had any ideas of things to progress? Because you're what I would call obviously a creative, especially with artists, even if you're just getting information or you're doing whatever sketch of what somebody else created, like the shirt idea, for instance, you're still creating that and it's in your own vision. So people like you will be the forefronts of these people that are creating ideas for new energy consumption. I mean, there's a lot of things we could probably be working on here, but I mean, has everything not caught up yet to the fact of like wind, all these turbines that they can put in water to get like ocean current to be able to spin and get energy that way? I'm like, I feel like now everything's caught up. We can probably wean off the tit of using electricity a little
Yes,
bit more.
and
Find a
we
way.
are. I think like solar is becoming
Yeah.
much more viable. Like people have realized they can just put solar panels on their house and it powers the grid. You know, all this crazy stuff. You know, it's just I think right now there's a lot of exploration into what can you have at your house. Because if we got rid of the power plants, like if we had enough solar panels around in order to power all the people, then of course there's the pushback because these power plants and stuff are big money, big power. You know, they still want to at least manage. So right now they manage the power coming off solar panels and stuff like that. You know, when you have the solar panels on your house, it offsets your electric bill, and anything you're not using from that goes back into the grid, which they control. So they kind of compromise that way. Like that's still something where they have the control. And that's the tough thing. Once somebody's really got control of something, it's very hard to convince them to hand it over, you know?
Well, we built a system that wasn't supposed to have like monopolies and stuff, and then they ended up becoming like low key monopolies, like the
Right,
cable and the cable things.
right. Basically you have like the one company that owns three companies that
Yeah,
Are
well,
the
that
three? So there isn't a monopoly. See, there's three companies, but you own
well
all three. Shh.
with Comcast, Mediacom, and all these things, there's like 50 different cable companies that all sit at a table, but they all are in deals with each other. When one
Yeah.
drops their price, they all drop their price. When one raises their price, they all raise their price.
Remember,
Nobody keeps it the
when did they
same.
drop their price? What are you talking about?
That's
What
it's
fantasy world are you in where that happens?
I'm in the steampunk era. No, it's a metaphor. But if you really look at the fact of like, there used to be commercials back in the day of like the 80s, 90s commercials where it was like the whole family with the Thanksgiving turkey, like the Fallout kind of ideal. But there were
Yep.
people that were barbecuing outside. They're like, go nuclear energy. And then like there's a whole bunch of like nuclear power plants in the back.
Yep.
And it was
Yep.
literally to show you like it's safe for
It's
the
safe to be
family.
near. Yep.
That's the market, is people just want to know that it's going to be safe. People really, even if it's effective, but it might cause a little bit of damage. If it's safe to you and your family is all you care about. You don't care if it kills a species of bird or anything down the line.
Right. Unless it's a really cute bird, then people will care.
Yeah, let's bring back the dodo. It's my
Let's do it.
mascot. He's been dead since 1894.
Well, they would. I haven't heard anything in a while, but they were talking about bringing back the mammoth
Yeah, they have clones of
in
it.
Siberia and stuff like that. They wanted to repopulate it because it used to do things to the terrain that they really need out there, I guess. They were
Well,
talking about compaction and stuff like that.
the issue with that is, I had a past guest mention that to me about like, well, they're going to bring back mammoths so they can bring back dodos. It's like the issue is that they found mammoth DNA in like frozen and like
Right.
rocks. With
Fully
dodos,
intact. Yeah.
dodos, people ate them, all of them to extinction. So you have to sort through their shit. And by the time now, like 100, 200 years later, their shit's probably like it dissipates into the ground and the squirrel picks it up and it runs off and it fertilizes this. It's like when a bee pollinates, the bee gets the pollen and it goes this way. The same thing with your
Yep.
shit.
Yep.
We would have steampunk toilets. That's all I could think of. Imagine that. You're trying to go to the back. See, that's probably why we didn't pick it, is the fact of like, if you look at a factory, they don't look appealing. Like, that's the whole reason why Seattle has that whole entire like atmosphere thing. It's a factory town. It's just
Right.
like Pittsburgh. There's steel mills are built there.
Look at like a lot of the cities in China, like the air is so contaminated from their power plants and stuff that they have a standard death toll just on air pollution.
So it's literally so contaminated that literally people were selling fresh air from another place in a jar and giving it to them.
Yep. I
It's-
remember Spaceballs.
I don't really remember. I only remember Rick Moranis with the giant oversized helmet.
Well, the whole problem his planet had was they were running out of oxygen.
Don't
So like the rich people had cans of it and they're like
that's a possibility.
yeah.
That's like living in space. People say, I can't wait to live on Mars. I'm like, I don't want to fear to take my helmet off. I would like to walk around without having to remember that. I was like,
Well,
at that point, they just developed like capsules you could eat that would oxygenate your blood more.
so you just kind of combine two things. You had Total Recall. I don't know if you remember that movie, Arnold Schwarzenegger, the alien machine to put oxygen on the planet that the power companies didn't want because they had control, as long as like people couldn't free walk around Mars with an atmosphere, you know?
I say everything I talk about is usually like, that's a Black Mirror episode, or that's this movie.
Simpsons did it. Simpsons did it.
Dude, don't even get me started. So I followed a Simpsons fan page, like a podcast page. They had like 99,000 followers or something like that. And then randomly, like I only follow on my Instagram, I only follow like 60 something people. So like I just try and stay off social media. I'll follow you on Facebook, Twitter, whatever stuff I'm actually on. And then I noticed that like one of the pages I was following, it said Trump is a liar, whatever it was the name of the page. And I was like, I have never followed a page that is anything political on my Instagram. It's all comedians and it's like artists or something.
Yeah, you got to I always stay completely out of the political spectrum, because as soon as you jump on one side or another of anything, half your audience is mad at you. And I'm like, I don't need that.
Well, if you go on my Twitter, I follow like cult people, ex-cult people. I follow everybody. I don't care.
That's perfect. Yeah.
On my Instagram, I was wondering, I was like, what page is this? And I clicked on it and they had the same followers as the Simpsons podcast fan page. And I clicked on it. They switched their name over. They picked a subject that everyone knows, everyone loves, and they switched their name over to try and spread out their propaganda once they got enough followers. I was like, that's fucking nuts to me.
That is nuts.
You expect society to evolve to helicopter bicycles when people are doing that's the wrong creativity. That's people that are very creative that are doing it in the wrong way, the worst of society.
That's right. And the social media world is very good at amplifying the worst of society.
I can't
And
even.
people
I
people
don't.
who fall into that and get enraged at certain things, like, just relax. Like, come on, it's people, some anonymous person somewhere typing something to get your attention. Guess what? If you're flipping out about it, they got your attention.
Well, if your computer was hooked up and it was powered by Steam, and every time you turned it on, you had to clear out your whole house for the rest of the day. Because
Hey
yeah,
guys, I've been working the midnight oil here on my computer, literally the midnight oil.
yeah, that's literally how you would get people to stop being on their devices if it created so much smoke and you knew it was contaminated. It's like if they told you right now that your phone right now, every time you use it, like a slow part of like its frequency messes with your brain waves and it kills off your brain. Sometimes when I get a really bad headache, I think it's because of my phone. So I'm like, imagine, I know I'm not saying 5G or any of those types of things. I've already talked about this to the guy that built the towers. He was like, it's bullshit. I'm like, okay. But imagine if with the Steam one, it created like it messes with your lungs. It's like smoking a cigarette. So then people were like, okay, but it doesn't
Or
give
it's
you
like
that.
vaping. I think it's like vaping. It's that
Why'd you
getting
got to
that
bring
much
that up,
moisture.
Johnny?
Yeah,
Huh?
yeah, yeah.
But
So you're already steampunking right there.
well, this is honestly, I know what it is. Imagine if your device, the thing that you use to, I don't use my vape 24/7. I use the
Right, but
actually, despite my
so
episodes.
suddenly you have me thinking, nowadays, modern steampunk. Steampunk is they keep it Victorian. They go back to when, so in steampunk world, you tend to dress Victorian with wacky inventions. But nowadays, modern steampunk, I think the vape pen is probably the closest thing to modern steampunk. Like, all right, so say you have devices in your room that run on Steam. Why not use like a vape oil in it? So at least like you're smelling, breathing in your vape stuff while you're powering your machines. I'm just thinking in a modern day situation.
See, my thought just went, but then you would have to pay for the oil. But then what would the difference be when
Exactly.
you already pay for electricity? Like
Oh,
people,
you pay for water.
well, yeah. Well, people talk about if you leave your like computer plugged into the wall or something, it's sucking off a little bit of that electricity, even if you're not using it. So I'm like,
Yep.
if you really kind of look at it, though, does it mean like would it cost the same amount as the vape oil? Like, I don't think people want to. Whenever money gets involved, people don't want to pay more. They want to try and find a way that's going to be the cheapest option.
Right.
And sadly, the cheapest option is the one that they push towards you that actually makes them the most money, which is
So,
nuts.
so in your modern day house, would your steam basically be like your heat systems in your houses right now? You know how you have the radiators and everything, and it circulates the same water in the pipes and heats it up in your basement and sends it around your house. Now, instead of having outlets, let's say you had the same thing as your heater system. You had something in the you had your boiler in the basement that would heat your water and would send it through, and you'd have these little ports on your wall where you could just stick the pipe from what you're using right into that, like almost like an air compressor.
That's the type of shit
And
that gets
that
you
that
assassinated, Jay.
that's I think where, if steam was the modern power, I think that would be how we'd be using it. Like your house would be steam powered. It'd be a circulating hot water all the time, like an on-demand heater like we have nowadays,
See, I just picture because YouTube, what they do now is YouTube chops up like the best bits of like an episode of mine. Like, so if you type in, let's say, like your past episodes, you've been on a couple of times, they'll YouTube it. And then next thing you know, it'll say like best moments throughout the whole entire episode. They'll say it, well, 15 minutes, they talked about fairy tales. And then 30 minutes, they talked about a comic series. And you can find this comic here and they'll link it in there. So when people click that moment, they'll get to the episode or they'll get to your page link. And it's gone so finite now. I'm like, I just picture a corporate CEO who's like running this whole like Illuminati system, rubbing his hands together. And he comes across this and he hears your idea for a pitch. He goes, someone needs to be assassinated.
So if this is my last episode, make sure you get this out there, okay?
You'll be on multiple times, but if you get assassinated and I find out on Facebook a week from now, I'm going to be like, okay, that was obviously an Illuminati Cyclops type dude.
Obviously. So we definitely have to do a t-shirt with my face with the Illuminati symbol behind it, with like hands coming out of it, like over my head, like
Or just do you like tied up and then thrown in the back of the trunk in a trunk, and on the back of the trunk it says capitalism, and then it's like you because you're trying to expose it and they're shutting it sealed with capitalism. Hmm?
Sounds like we have a TV show here.
I know. You gotta have the funky Seinfeld bass riff in the beginning. Boom, boom,
Boom, boom,
boom.
boom, boom.
So people get hooked. I feel like that's the only reason you really watch the end of it, like the whole entire Seinfeld episode was from that bass riff that they would always put in there. You're like, when's it coming? When's it coming?
Oh, commercials are up. Boom, boom, boom.
But that's a crazy idea though, because I started looking at it like how many birds are going to die if you start switching over to steam engine?
I don't know.
The amount of smoke that goes up in the air, like these things flying right
Again,
through it.
it's not it's water. It's essentially it's cloud.
Then why does it come out like really dark smoke?
Well, if you're burning something else, then that's the dark smoke. If you're just heating water, but you got to heat it with something, and that's a trick.
You're telling me some of that copper or pipe residue that you're heating it in doesn't burn off into the water and get dissipated
When
into
you
the
when
air?
you first start,
It's like when you leave the coffee on for too long on the stove or the tea, whatever you want to call it. You start hearing the whistle, but then you start drinking some of the coffee. You're telling me some of that has not burned off into your drink?
oh, probably.
It's got a metal taste to it.
But you know what? Same thing with like the electricity. Like you got your lines with the they have the insulation and everything. They heat up when they're drawing a lot of power. You can't tell me that some of that isn't burning off, and you got burning rubber and plastic in the air.
My biggest fear is that one of these devices one day is going to explode. I got a new laptop battery, like when I was in like my senior year of high school. I had broken one of my grandmom got me one for like as a graduation gift with something else, and the battery would get so fucking hot after a couple of hours being plugged in, and I'm like, you could hear it like if you put it up to ear, you would hear like it sounded like burning liquid.
Sizzling. Yeah.
It sounded like a drip that was burning, like when it would hit the ground, it would go.
Ooh,
Man,
yeah. You be careful with that.
that's what I'm saying. I was like, imagine if that just explodes in the middle of the night. How many people have had their house burned down on the factor of just having something plugged in for too long
Well,
where the battery
and
just
and
explodes?
there is one of the steampunk issues. So like if you hung a picture on the wall and you accidentally bump into a wire, it trips the circuit. You might get a little you know, that's about it. If you hit a pipe full of hot pressurized water, you're gonna blow a hole out of the wall, probably burn your face off.
Your, your fucking kid's eating cereal and a pipe just burst over his head,
Boom.
freaking starts singeing his skin. You end up looking like those people that have like
Life
no facial.
expectancy levels are probably in the transition until we really perfected it would probably drop significantly. I mean, I don't know how many people are going to survive their flying bicycles, you know.
Well, when you travel and you go up to like a really like a vacation spot and you see one of those pipes where someone welded it and it looks like it's just shit. It looks like they soldered it horribly, like the whole entire thing is all bubbled
And so they
out.
came back a couple times and just tried to solder over it to try to get it to hold. Maybe
Yeah.
a little duct tape around it too, just to make sure.
So would it eventually keep being like that because people are too lazy to find a finite thing, or would it get to like Futurama where they're flying around in plastic tubes? Like would it get so good? Like we have things now that are like basically indestructible, like metals and
Right.
all these types of things. So would that be the basis of the pipes, and how long until we run out of that? Maybe that's another issue. I feel like with all these energy
Right.
source things, you have issues. The sun
Right.
is just the dumbest one. Like imagine being an alien coming here and being like, you have a natural fucking resource that's up
You got a
12 hours
furnace
of the
right
day.
there.
Yeah.
It's up there all the time. Just which side of the world is it on? As long as you guys could just get along, you could use it all day long. You know.
You know, the dude at the corporate meeting, the sun guy was like wearing a sun t-shirt and he was like,
Oh, yeah.
guys, sun energy, bro.
How
And
come
it's
I
like,
just pictured like Jimmy Buffett sitting there, has a drink, an incredible tan line.
would who would the coal guy be like Johnny Cash just sitting there like sipping a whiskey?
Sipping a whiskey. He's got the black lung.
Well, when I say coal, when you picture a person, do you picture like I picture just someone that's very gritty, like very just like he doesn't sound good when he talks. He sounds like he's got like a trauma to his voice when he talks. He's like, I've been working 30 something years. It's like Pestilence, like the
Yep,
Four
yep.
Horsemen. They all look like the parts that they play. It's like
I'm kind of like really enjoying envisioning this power summit that we're creating here. I feel like we should buy an island and have like the experimental, like each of the different powers can try to run it for a little while and we'll see how it goes. Like well, Steampunk Island and
well, I look at it like that would be like probably the best thing. Imagine if you got to be able to pick which colony you wanted to be in or which place you wanted to be in based on like the energy companies, like the giant ones. If you want to go with solar, you're going to go with the solar guy. You're going to be on his team. So you're going to go to his island. If you want the
Yep.
steam one, you're going to go to the steam guy. If you want the nuclear one, you go to the nuclear one. But then everyone probably has their perks. If you look at like why we chose nuclear energy in the first place is because it's so easy to work with the capabilities that we have. It's
Right.
way more advanced than all the others. But now we've gotten to a point where it's all kind of caught up. But my interest is how many times do you see on the news of a nuclear meltdown or some type of thing where a power plant gets destroyed, all because it's like, well, they knew it was going to happen at any moment. It's 30 years past
They just didn't
inspection.
upkeep. Yeah, yeah. And that's the flaw with everything. So that's one thing you have to always put into account. It's like, all right, there's going to be human error. What happens with this power source with human error? Like solar panels, like the worst thing that's going to happen
Skin
is,
cancer.
well, yeah. I mean, not putting them on yourself.
I know, but
actually,
how
that's
many
kind of
times do
interesting.
you have to like freaking fix them when they're on your roof and then the sun's just beating down on you? It's more sun
Now I'm just
exposure.
thinking, what if we made solar panel T-shirts? And it and
Why?
it and it powered you powered your phone because people live on their phones. So you could be a influencer 24/7 because the sunshine powers your.
Are they waterproof?
Why not?
I'm about to say, because if they weren't
Well, yeah, they're
waterproof,
waterproof. You put them on your roof. They better be waterproof.
what do you call it? You remember those cameras they made for paparazzi or the t-shirts that they made for paparazzi? Whenever they took a picture, their shirt was reflective and it would shine into the camera. So whenever you saw the picture, like the paparazzi call up and go, Jay, give me a style, give me a style. And they're taking a picture. They would take the picture and then they check the thing when they got back to headquarters or whatever. And
Just
all
blurred out.
all the pictures was like a light on the screen. Like if you took a picture of like with a flash on, they're like, what the
Wasn't
fuck?
didn't that happen in The Ring?
I thought it happened in Don't Mess with the Zohan.
Oh.
Not
Because
Don't Mess with the Zohan.
in
I
The
mean,
Ring, wasn't it like they couldn't take
bedtime
photos
story.
of people after they watched the film? Like the faces would always be blurred out.
I don't trust photos. They're all lying now. Everybody's got a filter on them. You don't know what's
That's
real
right.
anymore.
That's right. I mean, I'm not really right now. Full disclaimer: I am not in standing in front of an exploding planet. Just
What?
so you, I know. Just full disclaimer.
This is supposed to be authentic conversation and thoughts, and now you're lying to me on
Sorry,
my
I can't
show.
hear you over the apocalypse going on behind me here.
That's because because they stuck with nuclear energy. Go back to the steampunk ball, please.
Yes,
I went
yes.
off about your story. I'm sorry. Okay, so
So I was invited to the steampunk ball since I had done the plans for the time machine. And I went down there. I was like, well, I pieced together an outfit. My wife dressed up absolutely gorgeous. And we went down. I set up my table like I usually do at a convention. Except I geared it more steampunk. Like I have steampunk artwork that I, put in the forefront. I put my Comic Con stuff more towards the back. It was there, but I had to like adjust for my audience. And it was pretty standard for a while. People were coming in through the building, checking out the vendors, and then the band started, and we all of a sudden got like different groups of like different kinds of fan bases. All the bands were steampunky in a way, like some of them they were like indie rock bands, and
I
then there
just
was
think
like,
of the Blue Man Group with the pipes where they're beating on the pipes.
yeah, there was like a band that was kind of like that, and there's another one that was like kind of bluegrass, but like modern bluegrass, so it kind of like fits the steampunk thing. And people were dancing and they're out in like their fancy Victorian garb, like with pipes and
So wait, was everybody dressed in Victorian garb?
I would say 3/4 of the people in that building were dressed for steampunk.
So did they
Like
just
it
put
was
all
an
their
odd thing to walk in without being dressed up.
so they just put all their effort in creating steampunk material instead of instead of like the steampunk era happened in the Victorian times. Why didn't they modernize their clothing?
I think it's an excuse to dress Victorian,
No, I mean
but
back then.
adding
Back then,
oh,
why did because everything you see steampunk is all happened to do with that old Victorian gowns
right,
and dresses. It's like they
because
just stopped with the creativity for the clothing.
I think just the modern style of steampunk is Victorian with a like a Victorian sci-fi is basically what it is. I think that's basically what steampunk is as far as like the way people dress nowadays. It's like old timey science fiction.
It's interesting that you talked about the Victorian time because that's probably the one I'm most interested with. I actually have more. I know I don't know the whole Edison. I didn't focus down the electric rabbit hole, I would say, but that's
Yes.
only a concept of the Victorian era was a prime time for creation as well too. There are so many different avenues in that. My whole fascination was with surgery. I mean, the medical industry back then was pretty advanced for just complete thoughts. I mean, people were there's a surge. Actually, I'll bring this one up. Someone I followed for a very long time, Dr. Lindsay Fitzharris. She wrote The Art of Butchery, studies the Victorian era. You know how they used
Hmm.
to get rid of gallstones, the gallbladder stones?
How did they get rid of gallbladder
They
stones?
would take a nail, stick it into your crotch through the pee hole, and they would take a hammer and crack it until it broke up small enough to be able to be peed out.
There was an awful lot of using a hammer and a nail to take care of different problems.
Got a broken toe? Let me nail it to a board and set it straight.
There you go. Yeah.
And it's interesting because they also used
Having mental problems, no problem. We're just gonna stick this nail right up next in your eye socket, hit it a couple times. It's gonna shuffle a couple things up in here, and we're gonna get rid of those bad thoughts for you. No problem.
that's the scary thing is if you look up how long the lobotomy was still used and it didn't end until like the 90s, actually until like the 2000s in some places. That's
In
the
some places,
scary
yeah.
part.
People who are really well behaved when they're semi-vegetable.
Oh my goodness. I don't know how you do that though, because the brain's so complicated. It's like what happens if you mess up and the person just dies?
Whoops. Okay.
I was here.
They were miserable anyway. They
I
had
was
depression. They were homosexuals or something, you know.
I was
We
here.
took care of it.
I was hearing a podcast and a girl was talking about her babysitter. What happened was she had like a deformed hand, like it just didn't grow. It just kind of stayed curved.
Hmm.
And the little girl asked, "Hey, how did you get that hand?" And she goes, "When I was young, I was walking with a lollipop in my mouth and she slipped and fell. And the stick part of it went into like hit like a back nerve in her neck or something like that. It went so far back, hit her in like the back right there, back there, and it pinched a
Yep.
nerve and it stopped the growth of that hand. Like
That is
that's
crazy.
nuts.
That is crazy. Holy smokes.
What do you call it? You know the famous UFC fighter? He's getting like a trending. He looks like a child, a little baby, and he's getting all over the place, like in videos of him kicking. Tried to kick another little kid, and they pushed him back. It was like two little kids fighting. You know what I'm talking
No,
about?
no, I don't, but carry
Um,
on.
I want to know his name. I think it's like Habib Nurmagomedov, I think his name is. But it's like he's a trending little kid. They were matching him up with Conor McGregor, like they were like joking around, putting up pictures of him and Conor McGregor. Everyone's like, he's such a cute little kid. The guy's 18. The kid is 18 years old. Now, I don't, this is all, this was trending a little while ago, but he has a brain thing where I guess his pituitary gland, whatever part, it didn't like release enough of the chemical growth hormone. So it
Mhm.
stunted his growth. So he just looks like a forever toddler. Like they have the forever puppies. He's just a
Yep.
forever child. I'm like,
Kind of like Webster.
Jesus, dude, I look at that like, oh my God, thank God I don't have like, that's my biggest fears. Like when you see people go, you got into a car accident. I'm like, I would hate to like get in a car accident and then have to move with a whistle for the rest of my life. That would be terrible. Put me out of my misery.
Yeah. There's some crazy things like the you know about the owner of Texas Roadhouse there?
Texas Roadhouse.
The guy who owns the Texas Roadhouse restaurants?
What happened to him?
He got severe tinnitus when he had COVID.
Whoa, tinnitus. That's like an old timey disease.
Well, that's with the ringing in the ears.
Yeah, with you put this thing in your ear to be able to hear.
He couldn't he heard like buzzing so bad he eventually killed himself. He couldn't turn off the noise and ringing in his ears. And I don't know how long you could sit there listening to all the time before it would drive you nuts. Like trying to sleep with that going on, it drove him nuts fast.
That's fucking
That's
rough, man.
I noticed that when I was at a Texas Roadhouse. Oh, just as things are starting to reopen, and they had the flag on Texas Road as a half mast, and that's when I kind of looked it up. I'm like, why are they doing that? And like I read up on it. I'm like, oh my god, like the guy, the one of the side effects he had after he had COVID was his ears ringing severely, and it drove him nuts.
That's like the singer for ACDC. Brian Johnson, I think his name is.
I'm surprised any of the ACDC guys can hear anything at this
That's the
point.
thing though, is with him is that he eventually had to stop making music because like he had to stop singing with the band. They had to find somebody else because he couldn't hear the band play anymore. His ears were so like bad. Like he would literally start singing and the band would play whatever he's playing. Like they would like if he's on singing like I'm on a highway to hell, if they're singing that, they would be at the part where he's at. So they'd have to let him start and then they'd have to come in because he couldn't hear when to come in. And then eventually I think he came back to the band after they get like this new hearing aid. They actually advanced that technology. I'm like, the only time you're ever going to see an advancement in a certain type of thing that's going to help people out is if someone famous or really popular gets it and someone's like, I need to put the effort to make sure I can give this person what he wants. My childhood hero. I remember Final Destination 2, that song, like that's the weird part about it. Like we still have walkers with freaking tennis balls at the bottom of it because no one has put in the effort to be able to fix these better than they are.
Right.
Then you see the one with like the handbrake. I'm like, how fast are you going? Like,
woohoo! Steam powered.
Yes, steam powered walkers, man. Little train, whatever tracks on them.
I'll tell you, there were some very old gentlemen dressed to the nines in their tailored Victorian suits with their top hats, and like they had the massive mutton chops.
But isn't that just because they like that era? Like
yes.
That's the one time they could dress up like that.
Yes. Well, there was another person that had bird cage like a backpack that was all bird cages and there were birds in it and stuff like that. It was crazy stuff.
What does the birds do?
Hanging out with everybody, I guess.
No, I mean, what is the point of the costume part of it? They're like, are they powering something?
No, it was, I think it was just, brass bird cages, kind of looked steampunky, and they kind of built this backpack to take their pets with them to the convention.
Isn't that like bringing, like, I remember walking into a GameStop and you know how people bring their dog places? This person had an iguana sitting on his shoulder. I'm like, you're just doing it so people point out that you have an iguana. And then when they start talking to you,
have an look, here we are. We're talking about it on a world famous podcast right now.
He got me. World famous. Gotcha. What show do you think you're on?
What? You got like 50 t-shirts. This is world famous.
That's just me being creative and drunk. That's all it is.
How drunk was this one? What were you drinking for this one?
Actually, my inner meaning behind that shirt was like, how many times do people talk about the monster of these pills and pharmacy things? And I'm like, that's what my brain goes to when I think of a monster, is like a kraken. And then the ship is just like, I don't know. I love the kraken. So I have a couple of good ideas. I just haven't tossed them out.
The kraken loves to play with ships. So it's like you gave him a toy. He appreciates it.
I was thinking,
especially if it's got screaming people on it.
I was thinking about doing like I have to send you the picture of the art style I'm talking about, but it's like two like statues, but one's made of ice and then one's made of fire, and one's on the left and one's on the right, and then they're like kind of like like one, or like actually laying down in like in a weird like like a sexual position, I would say, like how whenever you see a girl laying on the bed and she has her hands on her chin and she's smoking a cigarette, or she's like Pulp Fiction style. One's on top, one's on the bottom part, then my logo in the middle, and then it would just be like, I don't know, it was an idea for a short time, but I'm like, I don't know where any of this stuff comes from. It's kind of just like, you take a little bit too much whiskey, you have a rough night, next thing you know, instead of driving your car into a tree, you're just thinking of ideas.
I totally understand. That's where half my stuff comes from. Rough nights.
That's what I wish I had, like God powers, because I would just go to my own little world and start creating like random shit, like a giant statue of Diggum from Honey Smacks.
So maybe that's what heaven is.
What, creating all your own shit?
You get your own bubble, create whatever you want.
See, I'm not religious, but I had a dream about God in heaven. Like my dream, which I get really intense ones, and they're like, I only sleep like 20-30 minutes. Like if you look back at some of my episodes, like I have like dark bags under my eyes.
I have the bags right now, just so you know. Yeah. Like this last night I had food poisoning all night. So I'm like, what? I'm on nothing right now. Yeah, the steampunk food was delicious, but I got home and I'm like, uh-oh. So I've been kind of up all night here.
Hold on. You would think that with steam, they would have been able to steam it properly to the point.
I know. It was delicious.
What did you have?
Not the second time, but it was delicious the first time.
What did you have?
Everything. It was a buffet. So it was like, I'll take some of that, some of that, some of that, some of that, and just a couple plate loads of everything.
Did they have steampunk style foods, or was it like pizza and stuff?
It was, well, they had pulled pork, pulled chicken. They had
smoked anything?
There was nothing smoked, but they did have a smoky barbecue sauce for the pulled stuff, which helped. But
I think you have the best steam technology to smoke anything you want.
They steamed vegetables.
That's good.
Yeah.
Imagine that. It's like all we eat's fruits. It's like you have the steam technology to steam food perfectly, and now you're telling me this is all you got, like no lobster or anything.
No lobster.
Damn, all right.
Yeah, you know.
That's crazy to me. I'm sorry that you got sick, man.
No, and I know most of the time when we do the podcast, you're the one who has to like pick a time when you're usually sleeping, so we can do the show. And you're always exhausted. Now it's my turn. You know, I'm like, oh yeah. My wife's like, oh, cancel doing the show. I'm like, hell no, I'm doing this. I don't even know what I'm going to talk about because I'm on zero sleep. I've been
That's the best
in the
type of
bathroom all night. So
conversations.
here we are.
My show is perfect if you don't think about the words that are going to come out of your mouth. You just regret
Right.
them later most of the time.
Yeah, I don't regret anything I say usually.
No regrets, I would say.
No regrets.
But okay, so the dream I had, and I'm so sorry about your food
So here we go.
poisoning.
Dream sequence.
Exactly. So the dream I had was I got to this, like I'm up in the clouds, like an ideal of what you see like in a movie style heaven, the clouds and the gates. And I get to this
Yep.
thing, and before I can walk in, the gates aren't opening up, but the clouds aren't parting. And I just go, what is this? And a voice, like a deep voice, just goes, it is whatever you want it to be. And I'm like, is this heaven? Like, am I allowed to go into heaven? And they're like, do you think you should be in here? And I'm like, to be 100% honest, there's probably a lot of other people out there that are better than I am and that should probably deserve a spot to hear. And the doors and the gates and the clouds and everything just open up and just start going in. And I'm like, was that the correct answer? And then the dream was over. And I was like, okay, damn, I didn't even get to explore like my
No,
superpowers.
so
and
this
stuff.
is your heaven.
Have you ever thought that if you were actually dead and nobody's like your brain's just creating this whole thing because it doesn't want, like, you ever see what is it, John Dies at the End, that movie, Paul Giamatti,
Yes.
where he
I have
takes
seen that
the,
one.
the drug thing and his brain, like he's like, oh, you're dead, man. He goes, what? And they open up his trunk and it's him in the trunk, and then he just disappears when his brain finally caught up to the fact that he wasn't around anymore. Imagine if you got like, you ever had some near-death experiences where you're like, oh, I almost just died, and then next thing you know,
One thing I wonder is like they always talk about timelines split off constantly. So I wonder, your perspective of your life is always you made it. You know what I mean? Like the near death experience, like all right, and all these other ones you died, but in your own perspective, you always take the path that you made it.
imagine if every time you die or every time you went to sleep, it was you died and you went to another dimension that's just like this one, but it's another one, and it's just another body of you. It's exactly like you. Like people, like we're discovering apparently new dimensions now. Like we don't have fucking
Enough to do here.
Yeah, we don't have salt out of the water yet, but we're going to start discovering new dimensions. So people, like my idea of a dimension was like an alternate timeline where there's a Robbie and a Jay talking, but we're wearing different clothes, or there's something different, or I'm not in Ocean City. You're not, God damn, you're in Massachusetts, aren't you?
I am.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I got that one right. Holy shit. I was trying to think back. I was going to say,
Yeah,
Tennessee.
imagine you're wearing my t-shirt in this alternate reality. And
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, that's what I thought a dimension was, but they go, no, it's kind of like Doctor Strange, where there's like more than what you can perceive. Like if another dimension is like the spiritual or an astral type thing, that's kind of what it is. And I'm like, okay, so what is mine? They're like, that's probably an alternate timeline. And I go, imagine if you just went to sleep. Every time you slept was when you died, and then your consciousness just went to the other version of you, and there's just billions of them. There's just infinite possibilities and different outcomes. So it's not like, imagine someone just came up to you and go, you're actually like the billionth J, and they're like, what? It's like every time you go to sleep, you take those power naps, you're dying, and then you're going into another consciousness where you're living that other copy's body, like Rick and Morty when he has the power save thing and it brings him back, like whatever before he saves, you're just transporting into that other one. I'm like, imagine if that's a possibility.
it's pretty heavy stuff.
Do you think there's a steampunk timeline? Like there's a timeline that's just all of us in steampunk with the fucking nerd glasses and the goggles and the beaker.
Well, you got to protect your eyes from the steam. I mean, the goggles are essential. You get, all of a sudden you get some hot water spraying at you. At least you're not going to go blind,
Why is safety always seen as like nerdy? Like when you see the bicycles, the motorcycle guys, and they have the windscreen for when the bugs hit, it's like that looks so nerdy and dumb. But then you see a dude on like a nice chopper without the screen. He's got like no helmet on. He has hair flying in the wind.
Right. And then he smiles and he's got all those bugs in his teeth. It's awesome. Yeah.
Rolls up to the bar. He's just like, what's up? He's got all these dead mosquitoes and shit pelted across his vest.
stuck in his chest hair that he let stick out in the middle there, plucking them out.
Have you ever stuck your hand out of a window and hit something like a bee or something? That shit
Yeah.
hurts, man.
It does. They understand why your windshield always.
Yeah, I'm like, that's why when I get scared when I see someone like a street bike or something going really fast, I'm like, imagine getting hit with like rain. I remember being on a jet ski and hitting rain. It feels like bullets piercing through your skin.
Yep, yep. And then you think about like water torture, like tying someone down, having that just that one drop just hit that same spot over and over again.
I think that just makes you go insane. I don't know if that makes like a giant hole into your forehead.
It makes you think you're getting a giant hole in your forehead, which
Is that
I
your,
guess,
well, is that like the worst torture that you can possibly think of from back in the day?
in the grand scheme of things, all the different things they do to torture people, I think something that just fucked with my head for a while would probably be better than having something that fucks with my head and rips my fingernails out.
That's everybody's thing. That's my thing too, is if you rip my fingernails out. Another one is they had this old
I'm
thing.
talking. I'll tell you everything. You don't even have to threaten me with a
Exactly.
fingernail thing. What do you
When
want to
they-
know? I'll tell you everything.
They used to do this thing where they tied your hands up like this, like wrapped your hands up and had you hanging from your arms, and they'd slowly lower you with your legs like pulled out, like if you're doing like a hanging leg raise, onto a giant spike pyramid. And this thing would just go right up your butt and just split you. That's an old medieval style thing. That's like if you look at the medieval torture, like as sick as it was, there's some. I remember I got into a conversation with a
They really
person.
thought out of the box. They were like, "Ooh, let's come up with something." That's where all the creative people went.
Hey Jay, let me ask you a quick question. What show are you on?
What show am I on?
Yeah.
Right now,
Yes.
I'm on
What's the
Out of
name
the
of the
Blank.
show?
Out of the Blank Pod.
Why the hell did you say out of the box? You could have dropped the show name.
Damn it!
Everyone does that. I'm like, I get it. I'm like, eventually I want to get that phrase saying where one day I'm going to be listening to a Joe Rogan podcast and I'm just going to hear him say, because he says out of the box so much. And I'm like, I
So-
want to hear him say blank. I just want to hear him say it.
We'll edit it. We'll go in and we'll hack his system and we'll just have your voice blatantly override his right there. Blank.
Well, my other show was fill in the blank that I had, but this is the older one. And I hear him say that all the time. And I'm like, I could easily just morph that up into my show. But
You could so sue him. You can
Sue.
sue him for copyright infringement every time he
Dr.
says it.
Phil made a podcast called Fill in the Blank, and it's his name, Phil. And then in the blank, I'm like, I had that shit before he had it.
Ka-ching. You could have cashed in on that.
Dude,
On
I
his
saw.
sweet Dr. Oz Oprah money.
So you remember bum fights back in the day?
Yes.
Yeah. Honestly, it's like, hey, but at the same time, he's paying them. He's getting all this stuff. Like when the dude rips out his tooth and everyone's like, it's horrible. He made him rip out his own tooth. It's like he did it out of his own free will and he paid him handsomely for it. And it was a bad tooth. It needed to go.
Yep.
But
Well-
he was on Dr. Phil and Dr. Phil invited him on. And you could tell throughout the whole thing, he was acting like he hadn't seen the footage. Like Dr. Phil's going to fucking talk to someone that he hasn't seen their thing and then try
Doesn't know
and
why he's even there. Yeah.
yeah, and then try and psychologically analyze it. He goes, so I haven't seen your show, but let's take a quick look up on the screen of what your show is. And it's the whole bum fights thing. And they go back to the guy, and the guy who created it dressed up like Dr. Phil for the thing. He put like a bald cap on his hair, got a beard, like a fake mustache thing like Dr. Phil, dressed in an exact suit just like Dr. Phil. And he goes, I don't even want to talk to you. I don't even want, this is disgusting. You're a horrible person. Get out of my studio. And then the guy goes, you invited me on here to try and make fun of me and try to point out everything that I create and make me look like a bad person on this. So I come in here dressed up like you and show you that you exploit the pain of others. And everyone's like just silent, but everyone sides
They
with
didn't
Dr.
edit
Phil.
that out. Well, yeah,
No,
because it's his show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so everyone sided with Dr. Phil, but it's like, holy shit. Like that's what I've always talked about. I don't like Howard Stern because of that. I don't like Dr. Phil because of that. I don't like, it's not that I don't like them as people. I just don't like what they do. I could easily get someone in their worst moments of their life, have them on here to talk about every bad thing. That's not the point of it. I get it. If people like that content, they like the real part is why the Jerry Springer is so fucking popular, but it's not, I don't see that as morally right, exploiting somebody else's pain. It's a very, like when he said that to Dr. Phil, I was like, that is what you do. Like you exploit the Catch Me Outside girl.
Yep.
He made her famous off her making her look like a fucking nut job.
Yep. And that's what you got to bear in mind. Like any show like that, any reality show, it's all about, getting
Exploiting
the
other people's
views.
pain,
Yeah, exploiting people.
Well, Jerry Springer now has a judge show. He's a judge, Judge Jerry.
Sure, why not? And of course, he's not a real judge. They probably have a little disclaimer, but people agree to have their court cases settled with him as opposed to with an actual judge, and they get money for it.
It's kind of scares me. It's like going up against Judge Judy. Like she just strikes me as like, why would you even sign up to be on that show?
Because
Like
you get to be on TV, and
that's
you get, I think it's get $5,000 or something like that.
who gives a shit, man? Really? Come on
People
now.
people who want $5,000.
For an internet clip, like the non-fundable tokens, the moments that you can buy now, you know all about this?
No.
So you remember so Jake Paul fought Floyd Mayweather.
Yes.
Well, they're selling that moment. They're selling the moment of
Oh
Jake
yes,
Paul.
yes. Basically, it's almost like they crypto like authenticate. Like this is the one official. I'm the same thing. I'm running into the same thing in the digital art world.
What?
Like people, you can basically create a file which makes that one particular image the official original digital file. You know what I mean?
So
So
even if
someone
you
can buy
created something,
if you create something digitally, you have, infinite copies. That's fine. They look exactly the same, but it's a way of creating the original. It's almost like cryptocurrency.
have you copyrighted any of your stuff?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Can you teach me how to get that design that's on your shirt copyrighted?
Sure.
Okay, because I need to start doing that because people are like, you need to copyright your stuff. I'm like, you can take the name out of the blank. You could actually, I have all the handles for, which I'm not selling ever. But I mean, you could say like, oh, I'm gonna start the show and own the name. I'm like, but you don't own my thoughts. You don't own me as a person. This show, with part of my guest help, is also my brain of where I'm gonna ask you. You didn't know I was gonna talk about food poisoning on. I didn't even know you had it. Like that's the thing is like it just
and that's one thing about the show. Like people are like, oh, what are you going to talk about on the show? I'm like, I don't know. Whatever comes up, we're just going to talk about it.
That's such a leap of faith to get into because I could just have one day where I'm so obsessed with the CCP government where I'm off about politics for like an hour and a half.
I'm ready. Bring it on. Anything.
You're like, don't get me started on
I'm
that.
a veteran of your show. You can pull it right out of the blank, and we're going to talk about it.
Look, you figured it out. Look, you learned the
Bam.
Actually, I'm pretty sure you've done it like 5 times on my show where you're like box. I'm like, Jay, blank.
So close.
I know we're close. Just a couple of letters and add a couple. You know what's scary to me is the fact that we live in a world where public, if you change one of those letters, becomes something very dirty. Think it through.
It does.
Think
I don't
it
have to
through.
think.
Public.
My mind's in the gutter. I can go there.
Okay,
right
what is
away.
it then? What is it?
Publix. Oh my God.
Publix.
Just add the S. Oh, I know what you were saying.
No, I was gonna say pubic.
I know.
I'm just saying, I'm looking at that. I'm like, oh my God, like we live in a world where that's a thing. No wonder we're so messed up as a society and people are making shirts called Cash Me Outside. I wish I could be famous though. I'm not going to lie, but I want to be helpful. I want to be like everyone.
You want to be famous on your own terms. You don't want to be Dr. Oz famous or Dr. Phil famous.
I still want to take a shit in peace. Like I don't want to have to worry about people coming over to me and being like, I got a picture of the king taking a shit. It's like, that's the bad part about Elvis is that everyone just remembers of him dying on the shitter. I'm like, I feel so bad because he was remembered for so other things. Like I remember, what is his name? God, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. We just talked about him earlier.
Pull it out of the blank and spit it out. Come on.
Tesla. What's his real name?
Nikolai Tesla.
Yeah, Nikolai Tesla. Everyone remembers him for either marrying a pigeon or I remember him because he was the first idea of creating the death ray. He thought of a giant fucking laser, like the size of like a van that was in his basement that he has the concept of an idea of being able to disintegrate things with. And I was like, now how people have the alien blasters, he had that, but in a giant turret mounted form. And I'm like, that's evil genius shit. That's the one you want to elect. Like the reason why Bill Gates is doing so popular. He wanted to launch a missile at the sun to dissipate particles in our atmosphere to dim the sun. He wanted to do that. But everyone's like, hang on a second, Bill. Let's take a minute.
Before we change the entire ecosystem of the planet, let's think about this for a minute.
They're just 1 a.m. thoughts. They sound really good at the time. And then you look back at it the next day. It's like, yeah, if I would have done that, I probably would have fucked up a lot of shit.
That'd be a great little side project for you. Call it 1 a.m. thoughts.
1 a.m. thoughts. That's just me naturally. I have those 1 a.m. thoughts because I don't really get the sleep I need.
So you do like little like five minute things. You just get up and you're like, all right, guys, here's the thing. And then you just go right into 1 a.m. thought and you sign out.
I have my cousin writing down everything that I say and then putting it into book format because he's like, you say a lot of like interesting stuff. Like, and I'm like, I don't have the time to want to do that. I can't sit and write and type and do all these things. I'm like, I can only talk. So an orator, I would say, as someone once said to me, like, it's just good storytelling. And I'm like, they're just thoughts. I mean, it makes you think, even if it's fun or it's serious, it's nice. I mean, that's how you create some of your best ideas is just thinking them through. A lot of people have a thought and they let it dissipate or go away. And I'm like, focus in on that. Like, let's
Right.
zone in on that moment and let's
That's
try
what
to
all,
expand
all
it.
my projects are. Like you get that one, say that one weird dream and just like, you know what, I'm gonna take that kernel and I'm gonna create this whole thing around it, you know?
But when you put your art up digitally, like the non-fundable token stuff, does that like, is there anybody that's tried to mess with your stuff, like by trying to own it, by trying to buy the moments from it?
Sometimes like you, a lot of times, you know, on Facebook and stuff, and people are like, "Oh, we have prints for sale. Look, check out all this cool stuff." And you like flip through, and you're like, "I wonder if any of these artists know that you're selling prints of their work."
They're
You
not
know what
the
I mean?
they're not the created works of the person. They're just prints of someone else's stuff.
There's been a couple times when I've been like, "Hey, I know that person," and I'll send a message right over to them, like, "Hey, this place is selling prints of your work. Did you know that?" Nope, they didn't. They go after them to pull it off. You know.
That was the scariest thing for me was when like people like buy the shirts and stuff of the show. Is like I don't want to be at a thrift store one day and then come across one of my shirts. So I'm like, does that mean that there's so many out there, or does that mean that it's just not wanted?
That means it's come full cycle, man.
That's when you die then. Isn't that when it happens?
I
It
thought you
becomes full
die every
circle?
night when you go to sleep. I thought.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I try not to sleep. I'm scared to lose this form that I am at now. Imagine if I wake up in one of these alternate Robbies and I go to the mirror and I'm like, I didn't have this freckle here before. Where did this freckle come from?
Oh, you have a thing against freckles?
I have a lot of them. So yeah. It's like, I hate it. I look in the thing. I'm like, what are these? And people are like, they're kisses from the sun. My buddy's mom's boyfriend, when we went to go see,
Please, mom's boyfriend. Okay.
okay, so we went to go see Fast Nine, and I saw him, and he's always like, oh, still a little bit drunk from yesterday. And I'm like, what'd you do? He's like, I spent all day out on the boat. He's that type of guy. They call him Barnacle Bob because he's on his boat constantly.
Yep.
His skin looks like a saddle. And I'm like, bro, like put on some goddamn sunscreen. He's like, you sound just like his mom. Every time tell me to put on sunscreen. I'm like, dude, because it's gonna hurt, man. You're gonna wake up one day. You're like, why is my skin burning on the inside? And it's because you
Right.
have a skin disease now.
Yeah, you win.
I guess that's like Jeopardy. You just win skin disease. I'm
What
surprised we haven't
is
found anything to fix
skin
that
disease, Alec?
yet. What is skin? Why would you bring up the man's name? He's a new guy now. It's Wayne Brady.
Is Wayne doing it? I know
No,
they had different celebrities
Wayne's like
trying out.
a popular trend now. I think people are starting to realize all his work from Who's Line anyway. He's pretty talented.
Yep. Well, he's
Like
been doing what show is that? The
Cuphead show.
the Cuphead show. He's been doing what's the game show he's been doing? The one where the people wear the outfits.
Wheel of
And
Fortune.
no, the one where people dress up silly and they're in the audience and he pulls out like people in funny costumes and
Deal or No
you
Deal.
want a door number? Yes. No, let's make a deal. That's the show that he's
I,
been doing.
I was joking about Deal or No Deal. I don't even think that's a show anymore.
Deal or no deal? I don't know if it is anymore.
It's
I was
some.
in the audience for that once. It was terrible.
Oh, really? You were in Deal or No Deal?
I was in the audience for it.
Did you like on one
It's
of the tapings?
exhausting.
What do you mean it's exhausting?
Because they have to hype up everybody and you have to overreact to everything.
Why don't you
Like
just stand there?
in between shots, they have the rally person that comes out and like shoots t-shirts at you and then wants to get everyone hyped. Like you need to be super excited. Yeah. So it's like manufactured excitement.
Oh, that's cheap.
And so like we sat through like 2 or 3 episodes. It was I forget the name of the lady that took over after Howie did it first, wasn't
Yeah.
it? And then when he left, uh the lady that took over, she was the host for it. But
Wait, so you were there when the lady was there, not when Howie was
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I was about to ask you about with Howie because I know he has a germophobia thing. So like every time he shook the person's hand, would he say deal or no deal? Like, did he have to like every shot have to put like gel or hand sanitizer in his hand and do his hands really well?
I wasn't there for him, so I don't know. But I used to. There was a Comic-Con person I used to know that was a germaphobe, and sometimes he would talk to me too much. Like he'd be at my table yakking. I'm like, oh yeah. So eventually, like I would pat him on the shoulder or something while we're talking, and then he'd have to go desanitize himself.
Is that wait, hold on. Is that how you got rid of them?
Yes.
That's terrible, Jay. Just tell
Well,
him
like
to
I'm like,
walk away.
well, that's eventually I'm just like he's been talking to me for 15 minutes. I got people looking at my stuff. I want to get some sales going, and be like, oh man, I mean, I can't believe that, but whatever we're talking about, like hit him, touch him on the shoulder, or I just, whatever, just do something, or sneeze into my hand near him, something, and he's like, oh, okay, I'll talk to you later, and he'll scurry back off to his big vat of sanitizer he had under his table.
It's like in my neighborhood, all the old people want to stand in the middle of the road and then talk to you as you drive by. Like, hey, I haven't seen you in Fred. Let me ask you about your lawn. It looks like it's getting a little high, and I'm just like
Yeah,
rolling up
don't
my
ask me about
window.
my lawn. My lawn is now when I pull in my driveway right now, I instantly hear "Welcome to the jungle."
What? That's see, I'm so happy that we have a person that does that for us. Like our community has someone that cuts the grass for us or something. But like that, the whole people want to do it themselves too. And the guy's like, well, it's my job. So the dude that's just working the whole entire community just goes like, hey, they're doing my job for me. It's one less house. And I'm like, you're okay. But yeah, but it's 2 o'clock in the morning. He's using an electric lawnmower outside of his house with floodlights on.
You could be using a steampunk powered one.
Yeah, and he also could just golf like a regular retired person. Like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, it's awful. I'm like, oh my god, this is what happens. I get it because I work at a gym, so there's a guy that comes in, and I saw him twice. I see him twice a lot, and I'm like, you're back here again too. Like, I'll do twice a day workouts if it's my day off and I have no recordings or something. And he goes, well, I'm retired, so I work out 4:30 in the morning, and then I get home at like what 6, and then I just eat and sit around. And my wife's like, why don't you go do something? And then he goes, okay. And then he goes back to the gym and works out for a couple hours and he just cycles the whole time. I'm like,
And that's kind of what lawn mowing is for a lot of these guys. It's some exercise. It's some exercise. I always like exercise that actually accomplishes something too.
yeah.
Like I'd rather mow a lawn than walk a treadmill.
Have you tried incorporating that with your art? Like try and do like a dumbbell curl while you're drawing something?
Yeah, here we go. Yeah.
This guy needs a third eye and you just circle.
I was just you put weights on your paintbrush.
I am kind of curious though. What were you thinking and what mode were you in when you were creating that shirt design?
What mode was I in?
Yeah, because I feel like when I create something or I draw something, I'm thinking not only about the design, but I'm also thinking about where to take it. Like, you know how like if you see someone stick their hand up for a high five, you're predicting that their hand's going to go forward and high five your hand. You don't expect them to pull it away at
Be
last
like,
moment.
oh.
Yeah, like an asshole.
Unless I mean, like, oh, that's right, you are an asshole. I'm sorry, I forgot for a second there. You know,
But like, what mode were you in when you were creating that? Like, what were your thoughts going through your head? What was going on that day it happened? I like hearing about that part.
well, as you know, I've drawn quite a few tentacles in my day. That's why you kind of came out to me like, hey, I'm thinking these tentacles. I'm like, all right, I need to do something a little different with this. I wanted to make it a little grittier, so I was like, all right, so I hand drew the whole thing. And I'm like, I touched it up with some of the color a little bit digitally, but I basically drew the whole thing by hand, and I just put on some probably a little rougher music, just to get myself in the mindset.
I love it.
Like, yeah, destroy the ship, that kind of thing.
I love that.
I always have my mood music. I have different, all like maybe 30, 40 different stations I've created on Pandora that I'll flip through for like to get me in different moods for different artwork, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get up and I dance to it a little bit, then I pop down like, all right, I got it. Here we go.
Well, your style is so interesting to me, because you also, I think we talked about the first time you were on, more fascinated with the fantasy era of things too. Like we were talking about disenchantment earlier. Like the
Yep.
fantasy stuff is like right up the alley. Like that's where I'm interested too with Greek mythology, and I have a couple ideas. The blue, like the different element, the style one I was talking about earlier, it's okay, but like what I picture, like because the tentacles thing, the ship, the Kraken, that's all kind of older style, more fantasy Cthulhu style type stuff like we were talking
Right.
about. And it's right up your alley. I had one where I was like, imagine it's like, the ship in a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like like dropped and it's like broken. Like it looks like it dropped on a rock. And then it's just like it's leaking out, but like what's leaking out, it's like ooze out of the bottle. And there's not really a ship in there. I don't know what we could put in there. Something we're gonna obviously think of something, but it's cracked on a rock. So it's like you're looking down and you just see this thing like spreading apart, like it's
Almost like an alien inside or something.
releasing chaos into the world,
Maybe
like
like
Pandora's box.
maybe like a fleshy eye looking at you, like in an amorphous blob with some hairs and things like that around it.
Or even like just imagine like you know how they have message in a bottle, like a plant, and then the plant is like the vines are coming out of the bottle, like that's cracked, and it's just going over to like take over the earth again, like reclaim it in a way. We're talking about energy this whole episode. It fits.
Yeah.
But
Photosynthesis, man. It's solar power.
skin cancer, vitamin D, no coronavirus on the solar community. It only hits the nuclear thermo ones. But it's just interesting because I like hearing the styles and the mindsets people get into, because everyone as an artist has their own creative process. And that's where I get kind of scared with the non-fungible token stuff. If someone can buy your art that's digital because they're going to find a way, even if you created it and you uploaded it, who says you own it? If you check on my Instagram page and you hit the view shop, you get to see all the shirt designs.
Yep.
Some of them wouldn't go up there because they're like, you don't own this. And I'm like, what do you mean I don't own it? And then I click on it and it shows me that, oh, it's me that owns it, my page, but it's through Teespring or through this. It's like, no, you uploaded the design there. That's where they get it from. So they're the owners. So you have to contact Teespring so they can create a pixel for you. And I'm like, what the fuck's a pixel? And it's,
yeah, it gets weird. Like I know some of the social media, like even Facebook and stuff, it when you post something on Facebook, anything, they own a part of it. That's part of what you agreed to when you sign up for Facebook.
Instagram, for instance, I have a lot of friends that sell hot sauces. We know Jeff sells hot sauce.
Yep.
To sell on Instagram, when you make a post about things, they're now taking down your post when you go to try and make a post about certain hot sauce and you try and tag it, because Instagram wants a piece of whatever you're selling. See, they only let you sell if you're selling through Instagram because they're going to take off like 20 cents or 30 cents, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it eventually adds up if you're doing bulk sales. If you're selling a six,
you got a couple million people trying to sell things on there. You get 20 cents from each of them. It
adds up.
It adds up real freaking fast.
And it's crazy because as much as you can complain about the problems in it, they also find ways to be able to lure you in even more and get you this enticing feature. So it's like all about the more screen time you have on an app, the more money they make. They round that up and they make a percentage of that. And it's like, Jesus, it's like, how much are you guys really pulling in right now?
It's pretty serious. And then they throw the advertisements down the edges of it too. And
I just pictured Zuckerberg sipping a water and being like, money. So much money. He's like JP from Grandma's Boy, the robot. I'm not a robot. He's so robotic. Have you seen him sip water?
Yep.
Okay.
I have.
In that court case where he just takes
water.
That's
exactly where I pictured it.
And he puts it down on the table. He takes a quick sip where I'm like, he didn't need water in that moment. He just needed a filler. So he's not just sitting there on camera.
Yep.
Oh, it's like when I watched I think the guy who owns Barstool Sports, the Porteous guy, he and Michael Rappaport, you know who Michael Rappaport is?
Yes. Yep.
Got into this huge feud and Michael Rappaport was suing him. So this guy was in a court case and you see him, he looks like he's a little bit on pills, but he's not. He's just like really antsy because he knows he fucked up and did something wrong, but he got out of it because he's such a smooth talker. Michael Rappaport and him got into a fight and they were like, if you post whatever you're about to post talking shit on us, Michael Rappaport, I'm going to post a shirt with your face on it that has herpes. And as soon as they put up the thing, they had a recording of the call, upload the design. Michael Rappaport's going off about us right now. They had it already created and they were just waiting for him to make a move.
Press the button. Yep.
Yeah. And he denied that. And somehow they got out of it. I was like, all right, it doesn't take fucking Where's Waldo expert to be able to pinpoint that dude had that shit. All the shit lines up.
Yep. Yep.
It's a crazy fucking world.
It is.
Do you think it's going to explode like the one behind you?
If it doesn't, we won't have anything to worry about.
You know, it's such a mind screw is that I know in my head right now that that's not real. But as you turn around, you see your room that you're in, and I only see that. So it just looks like you're looking at the thing. It's like then your face goes into the blast.
And some sunglasses here. Or some goggles. I need some goggles. Where are my goggles?
It's like the flaw they had in Willy's Wonderland with Nick Cage. I love that movie. I thought it was good. I think they definitely fast forward. Like if you watch Fast 9, there are scenes in there where it's like it should be expanded upon by like 15, 20 minutes, but they don't do it. But in Willy's Wonderland, he's driving away from the explosion, and in his sunglasses, the explosion's happening. And it's like
Yep.
you're not turned around looking at it, so you wouldn't be able to see that reflection. It's shit that someone pointed out that I didn't even notice.
Well, it could be reflecting off the rear view mirror into his glasses. He's driving, right?
No, it looked like he was looking
I'm
right at
trying
the
to
explosion.
justify it.
Don't justify what Nick Cage
Oh
does.
my
He
God.
justifies it himself.
That's right.
Liam Neeson used to be a teacher, and now he's a famous actor.
Liam Neeson used to be an Olympic diver.
Did he really?
Look it up. It's freaky. He
Did you
was
know?
not the best, but he was an Olympic diver.
I mean, it's as long as you are just get into the Olympics, I feel like you've won for life because everyone's
Yeah,
going to
you've
know him
already
as
won for life.
Olympic
Yep.
athlete.
He was an Olympic diver, and then a teacher, and then an actor.
When what do you call it? There's like an Olympic medal for playing the best game of dominoes. I'll be that guy. So everyone will know me. You're an Olympic athlete. Yeah. What class
Yeah,
did you
yeah.
go into?
Curling.
Curling.
Yeah.
Dude, there's that
I'm the guy with the broom.
did you see the hardest hit in ice hockey or whatever it was? Someone put those curling weights out, and a guy just comes up with like a hockey stick and hits it as hard as he can. It goes through the goal, like hits through the goal, has enough speed to go and break the glass, and then also bust through a fucking window that's in the back where the spectators watch. Like it's like a movie scenario. I don't know if it's fucking fake. Like there's that interviewer that was interviewing this guy in baseball, and she was like, "So how do you get ready for the games?" And then he hears a bat crack, and you just see he turns, and as he turns, he sticks his hand up and catches this fucking foul ball that almost hits this lady in the face like nothing, and grabs it and throws it up in the air and starts shaking his hand because it hurt his hand catching it like that. I'm like, is that fucking real? Because it was a soap commercial. So I'm like, is that real moment? And people are like, yeah, it's like Randy Johnson that threw that 90-mile-an-hour fastball and hit that fucking bird in the middle of the game. Remember that?
Yep, yeah.
Dove
Or like
just exploded.
Jason Momoa there when he was drunk at the axe throwing place, and he threw the freaking thing over his shoulder, and it landed perfect bullseye, like way behind him.
I have so many moments of that in my life where I'm like, I'll never be able to do that again on my best
Nope,
day.
nope, you can't do it if you tried. Nope.
I was sitting across at work. I was sitting across like where the whole entire like front desk area is, and from the other side, basically like a whole like 50 feet away. As I saw the little cup, and I was like, I'm gonna throw this pen right in that cup as a joke. I knew I wasn't gonna happen. I just threw it and then looked away, and the fucking thing went in. And they're like, "Holy, can you do that
you're
again?"
Like, God damn it! I should have recorded that.
Yeah, I know. I was like, damn it. I was like, that's the one time. It's like when you see the people with the bottle caps and they have it lightly screwed on top and they flick another one at the bottle cap and it knocks the other one off. And I'm like, is that real? Or how many times did it take you to be able to do that?
On the 50th take, it finally worked. Yeah.
But on Out of the Blank, we only do one take.
That's right.
And
one and done, baby.
This is how it's been. Actually, we're probably going to have you back on, Jay, but we've been talking for about an hour and a half. Where can people find you?
They can find me on any social media, Jay Mooers, as it's spelled in the corner of the screen there. Since my last name is spelled funny, I'm kind of the only person that pops up if you type it that way. So you can find me on Facebook that way, Instagram, all the social media bubbles. You can go to my website, which is www.edenparktales.com. That's where you can find my books and a lot of my artwork for sale. And I'm always around. You can find me.
I've met two Jays now, you and someone else his name's Jay Sloan. You guys are both great guys, and you guys both create comics. He does the sci-fi stuff.
There's a lot of like the guys I know at Comic Cons. There's a lot of Jays. Like you yell Jay, and you get quite a few people going, "What?" Yeah.
You're just destined to be an artist for comics.
I suppose so.
I like it. Well, thanks for listening to this episode Out of the Blank. Stay tuned for our next episode.